the show, you were one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube and online all the time at westhesportsguy.com. If you want to get previews for the NFL seasons just around the corner, Major League Baseball postseason is going to be starting in a little over a month. Playoff previews for the NBA and NHL, bookmark westhesportsguy.com. You want to find me on social media, you get all the links there at westhesportsguy.com. And also the podcast link. The latest episode will be dropping very shortly, just working out the last little itty-bitty kinks to it. But the episode will be dropping. If you want to support that podcast, you can find the link at westhesportsguy.com. Leave a like, leave a rating, leave a comment with the podcast as well. I certainly will appreciate that. And same thing on this channel. If you like what you're seeing, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, get notified when all new videos are posted on this channel. Now, if you can tell behind me, there is no t-shirts, there's no hats, there's no sweatshirts, no nothing. Basically, the most, if not all, major sport leagues decided to take a little bit of a hiatus this week, and so I'm going to kind of take a little hiatus myself. And basically what I'm going to dive into with this episode is just to basically point out and really ask a couple questions, because I'm a little bit confused on a couple things. So I want to genuinely ask them with no sarcasm, no snarkiness, no condemnations, no any of that sort of stuff. No malice to it whatsoever. I legitimately have a couple questions. And I posted them on Twitter, posted them on my Parler account as well. You can find, again, those links at westhesportsguy.com. But I'm just going to kind of elaborate on them just a little bit here on this channel. So basically, what ended up happening was there was an incident in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It then devolved into more rioting and looting and violence of any imaginable nature you can think of. And basically, it's kind of what we've been seeing all summer long. In not all instances, but a good chunk of instances all over the country. So, for whatever reason, well, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, I know the reason. I just can't divulge a lot of information on this channel because YouTube will either strike it or curtail it in a certain way. So I can't really go into a lot of detail, but I will tell you this, my podcast will have a lot more of this involved into it, basically focusing mostly on the NBA and their cushy relationship with the CCP of China, which is the Communist Chinese Party. That is the government arm that has had a cushy relationship with the NBA for many years now, so that podcast will focus a lot of that, and also with the events that have happened this week. But with this episode, I just want to kind of elaborate on the questions that I posted on my Twitter account, which I will show for you here on the screen, and also on my Parler account as well if you want to get those links, westhesportsguy.com. So, getting right into it, the NBA Players Association more specifically, they decided to stop play on Wednesday, first starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, not wanting to play because of said incident this past weekend in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So it seemed like that everything was going to come to a grinding halt once again, and it seemed like everybody was talking about the NBA wasn't going to finish their playoffs, the season was done, it was over with, players were taking a stand, all that good stuff the night before on Wednesday night, and then by Thursday morning, everything changed because, hey, we had an agreement.
We have won! So how much did we get? Well, we didn't get everything that we wanted, but we negotiated hard and we got these coupons to Bennigan's and free bubblegum for every
NBA player.
Now, I'm making light of the situation, so the players got more of what they were already doing in their quote-unquote bubble in Orlando, Florida during the NBA playoffs. As you already know, they got Black Lives Matter on the NBA courts. They're constantly talking about these things and making their voices heard, which is perfectly fine. You have a right to your opinion. You have a right to state what you believe, all that good stuff. I have never been one that will flat out say, quote-unquote, shut up and dribble. I'm not for that. You have a right to say exactly what you want to say, how you see fit, and I do as well. Granted, I'm not, calling any action to bring about some bad things happening to you, and vice versa. That's not protected by any stretch of the imagination. That's not protected speech. You can practically say whatever you want, but there is just one fine line, and that's a call to action, a specific call to action, which I'm not doing that here. But getting into what I teased earlier with the questions that I posted on my Twitter account, going to highlight them for you here. First one I have. This is for all the major sport leagues. This isn't just for the NBA. This is for all of them because they all pretty much followed suit, whether or not they were peer pressured into doing it, whether or not they did it on their own accord, however the case may be. But legitimately, I have a few questions. First one, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, you played games knowing about what had happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin from the video you all say you saw. Why did you continue to play for 2 days after the incident took place on Sunday? I assume it took place on Sunday. And I assume that you guys saw it Sunday or you saw it the following day, whatever the case may be. But you played for 2 days. You played games for 2 days. So what changed on the third day? Next one I have, there are two sides to every story, giving you the benefit of the doubt that your emotions got the best of you. Shouldn't you have waited for all of the information surrounding the incident to be released before deciding not to play? Now, I say this because the information has been not immediately released because, let's face it, investigations need to happen and you need to get as much and really all the information at your disposal before continuing with said investigation, which they automatically do in these incidents. So all the information has been coming very slowly, but it's deliberate. Yet now that we have pretty much all the information at our disposal, it's not exactly the way that the players and all these leagues and players in those leagues as well have been saying how this has gone down. They're not, they don't have all the information. So if you're going based off of the emotion of it, I get it. We all get very emotional at times, but reacting and making decisions based off emotion is not a good thing. Whether it's to the extreme happiness, extreme anger, extreme sadness, being that emotional is always not a good thing, especially when you're going to be making pretty quick and rash decisions. Next question I have, it was reported that the two LA teams in the NBA in a straw poll decided to end the season being in the midst of their playoffs in Orlando, Florida. The next morning, everyone was on the same page to resume the season. To which my next one is, did cooler heads prevail, or did your union leadership advise you about future collective bargaining complications due to that possible action of saying, I quit, season's over? Or was the general conversation amongst you guys and gals, because let's face it, Michelle Roberts is a woman, she's the head of the NBA Players Association, or was the general conversation about how much money was to be lost? I think that's a fair question because looking at it from an outsider's perspective, like I am, it seems to me that, yeah, there had to have been some conversations about financial compensations and things of that nature. What's going to happen? What's the ramifications of stopping in the midst of all this? You're just about halfway through. Not really halfway, but you're almost there for the NBA playoffs. You're just about halfway through. You've already eliminated a few teams and everything else, so it's progressing. And then, yeah, collective bargaining, you guys aren't going to have to negotiate with the owners anytime soon, really, but this is going to come back to bite you in the butt for negotiations, isn't it? I mean, and also the revenue stream in the NBA is a pretty much split down the middle 50-50. The players are getting about 50% of this revenue, and the owners are getting about 50% as well. So that had to have been part of the conversation too, I would have imagined. But it would be nice to get some clarification on that one. Next question. In order to be consistent, will anyone in any sport league outwardly condemn the rioting, looting, and violence that has been taking place all summer long? I don't hear very much of it. Some people have, but I'm not hearing a lot of it. I think there should be a lot more, in my opinion. Why that is the case, I don't know. But I think it is worth asking if somebody will condemn that. And my reasoning for that is the next tweet. A vast majority of businesses already struggling because of lockdowns have been destroyed with the rioting, looting, all the stuff happening this summer. And they had nothing to do with the incidents you're speaking of. A lot of these businesses are minority owned as well. That doesn't get mentioned enough. A lot of them are minority owned. billions of dollars in damage. The entire country, all over the place. It's over $1 billion. It was estimated, I think, in Minneapolis alone, it was about 600 or 700 million, but we're definitely past $1 billion if you take in the totality of the entire country and the entire summer, 3-month plus period. Next question in the thread. Will anyone speak for other victims of gun violence, such as David Dorn, a retired police officer in St. Louis, Missouri, who lost his life defending a friend's pawn shop during the beginning of the riots, when that started happening in St. Louis, Missouri? Anybody going to speak up for David Dorn? Or the children? Just 3 to name. Natalie Wallace, Secoria Turner, Davon McNeil, that have been lost during this violent summer. Are you going to speak up for those names as well? Because I other than when the story happened, and the reason why I'm mentioning these names is because I read those stories. They're not at the forefront a lot of times because it doesn't get enough play as it should, in my opinion. But are enough people going to be speaking up about these lost souls as well? And again, I will stress, all life is precious. I have said that on multiple occasions. All life is precious. And no matter what the circumstance is, I don't want to see anybody succumb to whatever the situation is for them passing on. I don't like seeing that. Unfortunately, it is a fact of life that people do end up passing. The circumstances can be different and they should be changed if and at all possible. But you have to take in all the information, as I said in the beginning. All the information has to be available for you to come to a sensible conclusion. Reacting based off of emotion and something that's out of context for 10 to 20 seconds is not the right way to go about a lot of these things. Last set of questions I have. Lastly, you have been saying you want, quote, change or, quote, action to happen now. What do you mean by change and action? Helping people register to vote, telling them to vote, and having polling stations set up at sporting arenas is completely fine by me. I absolutely am for that. You wanna tell people the importance of registering to vote, to vote, and trying to make it as easily accessible as you possibly can. Hey, I'm all for that. Absolutely. I don't know of anybody that would be against that. But when it was revealed this week that only 20% of the NBA players as a group, only 20% of you are registered to vote, that's a bit strange. Last part of this, that was already happening with the voting stuff. That was already happening or was in the process of coming to fruition with the sporting arenas as well. That was part of this. Yet you're still saying you want change and or action. Can you elaborate further? And really, what I would like for them to elaborate further about is just it. To me, when you're saying action and change, those are key words in a kind of a talking point, kind of echo chamber where everybody just says, "Yep, that's a good punchline. That's a good word to just throw in there to say we want this, we want that." But there's no follow up to it. There's no, well, what do you mean? What changes are you thinking about? Now, some have elaborated. Some have said, we want better training, better community outreach. That's good. Those are good steps. I'm more than willing to talk about those kinds of steps. When you're talking then about defunding and taking away police altogether, that's a hard stop. That's a wait a minute. Do you realize what will happen if that does come to fruition? Do you know what will happen? Because we have some examples already currently from what's been transpiring when you do or propose something like that. The results are there. I can point them out to you. And then the other thing that you're mentioning is you want all these different things to just start to go about itself when it comes to how the system is working against you and how things are stacked against you here, and it's not about this is all about fairness, this is about equality and everything else. Well, yeah, everybody should be treated the same. I treat you as you are. I don't look at you from a basis of your race, religion, your creed. all that stuff. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. had a fantastic message back in the civil rights era in the 60s of, I want to judge you by the content of your character and not the color of your skin. I behold to that. That's awesome. Yes, absolutely. A lot of people have been brought up that way, and not just in America, but the entire world. Some areas are kind of lagging behind, unfortunately. But in terms of, do you feel that things are stacked up against you? I mean, it's an emotional argument. I can't speak for you. I can only speak for myself. I haven't experienced that. If you have, well, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to find out what it is. I'd love to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it should never have happened. But going forward, if you're going to tell me making the money that you are making right now, being in the sports realm, that you have had issues currently with the perception that everybody sees that you're making so much money, it's kind of hard to make that argument. I mean, you could see it from that perspective, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't say those things. By all means, go ahead. And by all means, if you want to outwardly, call for dismantling this and that and systems of oppression that you say are there, and you hate this person and hate that person, okay, all right, you're at least being honest. You're at least telling us how you feel and what you believe in. If you're deciding, let's just talk about Marxist ideology, okay, well, I know where you stand. I will oppose that. You need to look up the history of Marxism. It's not a good thing. It doesn't help anybody, really. It sounds good. It doesn't really help anybody. But seeing how this is devolving into everybody's digging in, everybody's got their sides, they don't want to hear anything anymore, everything's just emotional now. Take a step back. I've been taking steps along this way, not just for this year with all the craziness, but even before this. I mean, this country elected a black president twice. I think there's been quite a few things that have been pretty good for the most part. We've gotten the civil rights legislation before my time. So growing up in this country the way it's been, I have no qualms about how good it is, how great it can be. Yes, we can make things better. Absolutely. Have things been terrible in the past? Yes, there have been a lot of terrible things. But ask yourself this question, and I've asked myself this question many times before this year, but ask yourself this question. At any point in time, not even just in America's history, but just in the entire history of the world, would you rather live in any other era than the era you currently live in right now? Really think about that question, because I look at it this way. Would I rather live at the time of when Jesus was walking and when Jesus was among us? Yeah, there might be some good things about it back then, but there was a lot of death and disease and just violence, and nobody had any rights to really almost anything. America wasn't around. Go back to the Roman days. Were those really good days? No, I don't really consider that good days, because again, war, death, disease, no equal justice under the law, all this, a lot of bad things. I can divulge into this quite a bit if I wanted to, but honestly, look at that question. Think about it, and please, I'd love to hear it. Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your answer. And if you tell me you'd rather live in this era than the current one that we're currently in, I'm all ears. I'm willing to listen. For me, that question is very easy to answer, simply because I look at the totality of everything, and looking at just the advances in modern medicine too are amazing. The median age of Americans living today is 78 years old. What was it 50 years ago? What was it 100 years ago? What was it, in the beginning when the country was founded? Just based off of that fact alone, I mean, I would much rather live in this era than any other one, because I get to talk to you like this. I get to communicate with you in many different forms. And we get to see all the good, we get to see all the bad at the same time, at our own pace. And it can be overwhelming sometimes, but all in all, I'd rather live now in this era than any other one. But sincerely, I would love to have some answers to those questions, if at all possible. You can find me at the Twitter handle at westthesportsguy.com. All the social media links are there. If you have an answer to that question I posed to you here at the end, please leave a comment below at the bottom of this video. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications when all the other new videos are posted. Podcast is coming. The podcast link is at westsportsguy.com. Use that hashtag #OneOnOneWest. And until then, I will see you next time.